Thank you for downloading from Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. Support for this podcast comes from your generous gifts and donations. You can find out more about Ravi Zacharias and the team at www.rzim.org.
What happens in currency happens in morality. You cannot live off capital you don't have. You will become a spendthrift from an account that is not there. And sooner or later, you will end up with moral bankruptcy.
Welcome back to Just Thinking. Are you called upon regularly to defend your faith? Do you face tough questions about the credibility of the Christian worldview? Our faith is challenged from all sides in today's culture, and it's critical that we as Christians defend our beliefs with reason, logic, and heart. On yesterday's program, Ravi outlined the attitude of today's culture. He picks up there in part 2 of his message, Defending the Faith We Live.
Now, how did all of this come about? I have traced it into the following sequence, but I want to put it side by side with the biblical narrative, okay? So let me give you 6 initial ideas that were presented in the scriptures. You see, when you look at the Holy Scriptures, there are 3 words that begin the story. Bereshith bara Elohim. Bereshith bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created. In the English language, we have 5 words. In the Hebrew language, we have 3 words. Bereshith bara Elohim. Everything from there hangs on those 3 words. In the beginning, God created. It is not accidental that the naturalists wanted to kill all of the narrative after that by taking on the first 3 words. Because they knew the importance of the peg. If you can somehow explain humanity away as a random collocation of atoms from primordial slime, here we are as thinking atoms and somehow talking morality and metaphysics and all of that we are here with no prevision, no pre-plan, no ultimate purpose, that we just happen to be on this scene. Imagine that. Think of the implications of that if it is true. If it were actually true that no person, no moral framework governed your existence. Not at all surprising that it would become a very lonely planet. I remember talking to a journalist of the New York Times a few weeks ago when he wanted to do an interview with me on what's happening in our churches on the heels of this economic crisis. And I said to him, do you mind, sir, if before you ask me your questions, I ask you just one? He was kind of humored by it. I said, really, I'd like to ask you one because you're a journalist from the New York Times. I said, all these decades in our Ivy League schools, we trained our MBA graduates and our philosophers to believe morality was relative, that there are no absolutes, that there's really no ultimate right and wrong. You have to determine what is right and wrong. Now when they become the heads of Enron and banks and insurance companies and believed what they were taught and practiced a relativistic ethic, we put them behind bars. Why are we imprisoning them for believing their professors? Don't you think we ought to be trying their professors as well? Silence. Silence. This disjunction between assumption and practice is the systemic breaking point of our culture today. Do you know what's happened in our culture today? I was showing this to friends last night at dinner. I'm a very wealthy man, actually. You may not know this. But I have in my wallet an authentic $100 million bill. And I carry it fearlessly. You know why? It comes from Zimbabwe. And it's expired. They're printing money there every 3 months. $100 million probably would have bought me a loaf of bread because the inflation rate is 500 quintillion% per year. I don't know what that means. I just heard it on the news. 500 quintillion% per year, where prices are doubling every 31 hours. Now, you know what's happened in the economy? We were spending money we never had. We were borrowing money without any guarantee to ever get it back. We were loaning money to people who did not have the capacity to return it. This was not done with one or two, it was done with millions, and it became payday someday, and there was nothing to be paid. What happens in currency happens in morality. You cannot live off capital you don't have. You will become a spendthrift from an account that is not there, and sooner or later you will end up with moral bankruptcy. And so a television executive who founds a station to give a better view of Islam than the Westerners have ends up slitting the throat of his wife because she was going to leave him. Wonderful solution, isn't it? You can't spend what you don't have. And what is it God intended for us to have? Here are the 6 points. The first thing is, God made an announcement in the book of Genesis, and God said. God's assumption in the narrative is that He's a speaking God, He's a communicating God. He's not a silent God. He is there and He is not silent. That is the starting point of the book of Genesis. And God said, if you believe Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God, you also believe He's a communicating God. He's a revealing God. There's an announcement. Secondly, there is a commandment. Let there be. Let there be. And God is replacing chaos and darkness with order and design. Have you read any of the books on spirituality recently? You talk about one confusing mess of propagators. Don't waste your money in buying Deepak Chopra's book on the third Jesus. These people actually think they've come up with some new fanciful ideas themselves. Most of it is utterly pathetic. But top 10 New York Times bestseller list. We bring darkness into light in the name of enlightenment. God brings light into darkness in the name of truth. So He first gives you an announcement, then He gives us a commandment, order and design. You know, I had back surgery again, and when you go into the surgeon's office and he shows you that spinal column, and you watch the intricate networking of nerves and fibers and all of that and the discs, and you see that with all of its intricacy, the human mind still cannot replicate that which has happened by the designing work of God, which naturalists would like to think came from the amoeba, which had no spine. This is so important to understand, order and design that God is giving to us right from the beginning. Announcement, commandment, thirdly, separation. There's a division of night and day, water and land. Boundaries are set. So God institutes divisions. There are demarcations. There are lines you do not cross. There are boundaries you do not test. There is the reality of God setting boundaries. If you violate the law of gravity, you don't break the law of gravity, you break yourself and prove the law of gravity. There's a reality that God has set in motion here. Any one of you flirting with violating God's laws, I've often said you end up breaking yourself in the process. Number 4, there's a narrator's report, and so God made. In other words, you've got the revelation of God, the announcement of God, the commandment of God, the separation of God, and the summary given by the one to whom the revelation is named, and the naming process begins. Naming is a critical aspect of life. Very critical aspect of life. Do you know how we have flirted with renaming things? If you rename things and recategorize things, now we call it honor killing. Once upon a time, it was a brutal slaughter and murder. Now it's honor killing. We punctuate it and rename the whole thing. You may as well rename rape as a loving act. That's the game the secularists are playing. They are renaming things, By renaming, you reconstitute a reality and introduce a new concept. I'm not going to go into the things that have been renamed, but go ahead and look at the history of this. We don't like to call the child in the womb anymore as a child. It's the product of conception. And this renaming has been done by a product of conception, just a little older. The naming process. Number 5, an evaluation is given, and God saw that it was good. The pronouncement given by God, that it was good. And number 6, God blesses, be fruitful and multiply. You know, this is a beautiful narrative with which to begin. It starts off with the Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God. You move from an announcement to a commandment to a separation to a narrative report to an evaluation to the blessing of God. That's the intent of God. Now, as we came through various philosophies of life, when we went through the entire process of heresies, when the church fathers started to respond to it, and then you got the medieval times where there were all types of sectarian battles developing, each one having the corner on their truth. So you develop in the 13th, the 14th, the 1500s, the philosophy of rationalism, where truth was going to be tested by the power of reason. And René Descartes came out with the idea that rationalism it's the ultimate form of testing truth, but he could not test that itself with the rationalistic process because it was self-referencing. And so he started off with his existence. For me to doubt my existence is to affirm my existence, and therefore, I think, therefore I am. He really ought to have said, I think, therefore I'm a thinking thing. That's really what he ought to have said.
We have to end the program there, but be sure to tune in tomorrow as Ravi continues to look at how you can defend your faith in today's world. If you'd like to order a copy of this message, call us at 1-800-448-6766 and request the title, Defending the Faith We Live. Or you can order online on our website, where you can purchase resources from Ravi and other members of the RZIM team. Our site is also a convenient way to stay up to date on the latest information and events happening around the globe. Visit us online at rzim.org or rzim.ca for those listening in Canada.
If you enjoy this program, be sure to check out our podcasts, Ask Away, Thinking Out Loud, and Vital Signs. The goal of these podcasts is to help you grow in your Christian faith and to have more fruitful conversations with friends or family members about culture or other important events being discussed today. You can listen to episodes of these podcasts on our website at rzim.org, or in Canada, that website is rzim.ca. We'd love to hear your comments about our radio programs. You can email us at radio@rzim.org, and when you contact us, be sure to let us know which radio station you're listening to. Just Thinking is a listener-supported radio ministry, and we could not continue providing this resource without your help. If you'd like to donate to our efforts, be sure to call us at 1-800-448-6766 or visit us online. This program is furnished by Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, Atlanta, Georgia.